All right, guys, welcome to the We See You podcast. Today I have Gizelle with us from Fidelity National Title.
Hello.
And a lot of times when I'm starting these out, I like to start off with something that is unique or that I notice about you, or the guest that's on the show.
That's sweet.
So I will say one thing that stands out for me is, especially as a business owner, is providing value, right? So coming in and providing a value, really lifting and encouraging agents up individually rather than a lot of times in brokerages, you'll see partners really focus on the decision maker and then kind of leave everyone else out. And people feel that, right? They feel the energy. They feel the, oh, well, yeah, Matt gets the attention, but I don't. Well, I feel like in this case, everyone's on the same playing field for you. And that's what stands out to me about you.
That's like the sweetest thing ever. I didn't know we were going to have like a love fest already.
Yeah.
I'm like, Matt, I think you're really nice too.
Yeah. Well, it's genuine. We appreciate it. That's why you went over a lot of our agents' business. So keep doing your thing. And we're happy to have you on the podcast today.
I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to be here.
Cool. What do you want to talk about first? I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in the market. So.
I mean, there's a ton of things happening in the market. But I mean, for me, I'll get right into it, right? I think the number one thing right now, all things considered, is to just remember now's the time to work. It's not the time to kick back. I was just sharing that I hadn't taken a vacation with Fidelity since I started. And my brother's turning 40 and the whole family's going to go on a trip.
You're going to turn 40 once.
Exactly. So I'm so excited to do it. And I think work-life balance is, very important. However, knowing that I'm going to be gone, what does that mean? I know I'm going to step up in advance, right? And so I got to tie up all my loose ends prior to going. And so I worked all weekend. I did 2 seminars over the weekend. I was following up with people. I took a client out to dinner on Saturday night. So it's really just about continuing to do what we know, how to do and following through on those things, So I don't think anybody right now needs to reinvent the wheel. I think that we just need to get our hands dirty and get in there.
Yeah. And I mean, especially when you're taking time off, I know there's a running joke in real estate, right? If you want to get busy, go on vacation. But you just mentioned the two things, right? You either plan ahead and you get ahead of it. It's called being proactive.
Right.
Or you're going to be reactive, which again is never good because then you get back, you've got vacation hangover, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. And now you're playing catch up. You don't want to go to work because you're so far behind, and that can snowball out of control. And, whether it's real estate, I shared with you that I worked in mechanics before. One of the big things we used to say to people was, do you want to do preventive maintenance or reactive maintenance?
Right.
It's way more expensive to do the other one. And it's
Absolutely.
the same running a business. It's
staying ahead of the curve and having a plan, right?
Yeah.
So having, the market kind of adjusting a little bit is interesting because, for example, the seminar that I was at yesterday, there was multiple people. It was actually a wedding expo, which, by the way, if you're a realtor and you haven't hit up a wedding expo, let me talk about like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah. Right. There's so many different avenues, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, people are, first of all, you get in contact with all the vendors, which is, important and great. They're all business owners. Most likely they like to invest and whatnot. But also you're talking to these gorgeous young couples that are planning for their future and
going through the most big stages of life. Yeah,
exactly. So the next step, most of the time after you get married is most likely purchasing a home, maybe having a family, things
or
like
upgrading.
That. Yeah, absolutely. So it was really interesting to kind of see a lot of these couples come by, and a lot of them were kind of nervous. I heard from them. And as I continued to kind of, uncover some of the layers of their thoughts behind that nervousness, what really they just needed was to have support from people that knew what they were doing and some mentorship and guidance, right? So I was kind of sharing with them, I'm like, just because, you're nervous to maybe do this today or you're not ready right now, why is it we can't play the long game here and set ourselves up for a plan 12 months from now? So are we going to partner you with, a realtor, a mortgage person, get you pre-approved, maybe, a credit repair person, whatever that might look like, and start making smart goals.
Yeah.
So everybody, I think, and you say it best, like what's the saying about waiting for real estate or don't wait? And
Yeah. You're either, you God, of course, I'm gonna mess it up on this one.
That's what happens. Everybody knows what we're about to say right now.
You don't wait to buy real estate. You buy real estate and wait.
Yes, there's never a bad time on the planet to get into real estate. You've said it also, it's always going in this direction.
There might be some dips and curves there, but essentially, if you look at the graph and draw a line from the top to where we're at now, it hasn't gone down.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm like more upset with myself than not the fact that I didn't start investing in real estate earlier.
That's very common. You're not alone.
Right. And I think a lot of people need to understand that. And, 0 times 50 is 0. 0 times 10 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. So stop waiting because you're nervous about, an interest rate that quite frankly isn't that scary. Furthermore, we have programs to work around it.
And it's zoom out, right? It's bigger picture. Like,
do something.
Don't look at the last 5 years. It's the same thing with real estate and agents. Like one of the big things I've been teaching, you heard at our office meeting. Yes, it's very different that the market's shifting and you're not like signing a listing agreement, getting 25 phone calls, and then getting paid next month. Sometimes you are, but not all the time. You can't guarantee it anymore. But that's a good thing because we were missing out on all those opportunities of sign calls like, hey, one of our agents just today got one. Hey, we've been looking for a house in an in-law suite. The house has been on the market for, over 30 days. That wouldn't happen before. So now you're working with a lead that needs to sell their house and they're going to buy a house. At the end of the day, the opportunities are much greater because you're actually not just listing a house online, taking a bunch of contracts, and then going to repeat the process.
Right. And that gives you an opportunity to connect with somebody else, learn about different people.
Educate, like at that seminar.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm big on, you put the right people in front of people that are nervous, and you find out, like you said, uncover the layers. Why are they nervous? I mean, they're going through a lot right now, planning a wedding, of course.
Right.
So if you could take the stress of buying that first house and reduce that, and then make it seem fun, simple, or have all the right tools to say, hey, when you are ready, here's your packet. Just open it up. After your honeymoon, you've settled down, everything's cool. Okay, it's time to buy a house. That's the next thing. Because, I mean, think about it. Everyone gets that, it's that like high, that the endorphins rush of planning a wedding, and then it's gone like that. Right? Like it's 4 hours, 6 hours, unless you're having like a week wedding. But in most cases, it's an evening.
Right.
And then you're on a honeymoon for 7 days to cool down or whatever. And then you get back and it's back to reality. And at that point, you've been planning for a year, 2 years, and now there's nothing to plan. There's a void there.
Right. Now we can plan to buy a house.
Right.
Or an investment property if you're currently in a home to plan for your future.
Or like you said with, let's say you've been together and you have a house. You want to start having children. The house might not fit anymore. Or you want to be around other homes with children, location-wise, schools. I mean, there's so many different things.
Right, absolutely. And I think it's interesting, too, right? Like, let's just say you're going to put your money into I think it's like a 205. I forgot the actual title for it, but basically like a college fund that you put together, right, for your kids. But it's interesting because, quite frankly, the stock market has even been a little bit more risky than real estate.
Yeah, there's a Florida prepaid program, and I know a lot of the generation above me is taught to do that, to prepare. I don't know if I've shared with you or not, but I went through all the avenues of children's life insurance, universal life insurance. I mean, they all have really good programs and benefits, but being a realtor, I mean, it was after doing all the numbers, it was silly to me to not buy investment properties and just have that labeled as this is for this child, this is for this child. And by the time, I mean, you take out different loans when you're doing investments, but by the time, if you do that for every child you have, if you're in the position to be able to do it, we have 2 right now and 2 children, and both of them will be paid off and will be producing income at the time, and you can borrow against it. And you're looking, these homes are between $200,000 and $300,000, right? The best part about it when you're looking at investing, and I'll obviously need a whole another podcast for this if we're doing a whole one on investing, but essentially these are the platforms you have to contribute monthly, right? With an investment home, you contribute one time, and if you set it up right and you shop well and you have a good realtor and do the right things, the tenant will be paying off that or contributing to your children's future technically.
Correct. And I think that that's another huge point to make is like, just get your hands on a piece of property.
Everyone looks back and says, I wish I had.
Yeah, because there are exit strategies too. You're not necessarily stuck, but the
Right.
reality is that's a very easy, simple way to invest is that you get somebody to rent the property
Yep.
and then they're paying down that mortgage for you. Again, it's not about that cash flow. Sometimes it is about that cash flow.
That word to me just, it's, you know, and there's great investors out there that are the heavy cash flow and they're living great lives. But it's more tailored to what you're trying to do. Like if we're talking
Right.
children, I don't need them. Sure, if I get one with great cash flow, that's awesome. My main thing is when you look at any charts, and you can Google this, I've done a video on one, but anything that you do, you contribute initially. So like a Roth IRA, like 5,000-6,000 a year, you know, steps up a little bit, little by little. The thing with a house is it's a bigger initial investment because usually you're putting money down on an investment home, 20%, let's say 25. So you make that big initial contribution. But from there, if you manage it right and you put money away for vacancies, losses, repairs, and things like that, and the cash flows there, don't take the money out of it. Leave it all in the account for repairs, things of that nature. But you may never have to contribute to that again. So let's say $60,000 one time, right? You have a balance of $240,000. You bought a $300,000 house. That balance goes down over time, right? Mm-hmm. And then the equity should go up over time.
Right.
It might dip and whatever, but over time, 15 years should go up. You have essentially put $60,000 into a house that's now worth $500,000, and somebody else paid the $240,000 of debt off. So you didn't invest $60,000 to make $250,000. You invested $60,000. Somebody else paid off $240,000, and you made the other $250,000. So you made $500,000. The gap is easier when you see a graph, but basically the line at the bottom, this line goes down.
Right.
And that gap gets larger. And
So essentially, what you're saying is, I would make money while I sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone's heard those terms, but I think like it goes back to that seminar. Like, if you can put it in ways that aren't so scary,
Right.
or that you understand,
Right.
because people don't see that gap, and it takes 15 to 20 years to actually realize that gap, and then it's too late.
And I think the other thing to that too is like, you don't have to be the person that's taking in an application for a person
Right.
that's going to lease.
Mm-hmm.
There's property management companies that we partner with that know what they're doing, do it day in and day out. They understand evictions. They understand how to
Mm-hmm.
deal with the risk. Personally, backstory about me, I was in multifamily for 16
Mm-hmm.
years prior to switching over to title. So right now, you know, I was so nervous myself to get
Yeah.
my first property and then rent it out. And you know, again, I'm just so thankful now that I did it. But it's funny, even with my experience, I was nervous at first, and now I haven't had any issues. And in fact, I've been flourishing with that. So everything that I do now is to hustle, work, so that I can get more money to buy more
Yeah.
assets.
As soon as you see the
versus-
value, it's like,
Yes.
oh, I need more.
Yes.
I need more, especially when you have the systems in place. Going back to multifamily real quick, or like apartments, one common thing that I see, because you brought up property management.
Yeah.
One of the big obligations I see, and it's a lot of time, it's that tenant mentality or that non-ownership mentality, is expenses. They always focus on, well, property management's 8 to 10% a month. That's an expense. I'm like, okay, you can focus on the 8 to 10% a month, or you can focus on the 90% of income, right? Which one's larger?
It's a lot of mindset.
Yeah, it's always that expense mentality, though. If you're investing, investing doesn't mean I'm making money now. Investing means I'm making money in the future,
That's
right?
a great solid point.
It really is. So you can't focus on just expenses or monthly expenses. It's what is this going to look like in 5 years, in 10 years? And then actually real estate it's the most solid investment there is. I mean,
well, it's kind of
just
funny
is.
to piggyback on that too, right? Because when I rented out my houses,
Mm-hmm.
I told them, you're responsible for the landscape, you're
Mm-hmm.
responsible for the pest control, you take on the utilities, you know, like, don't call me unless there's a fire, flood, or blood.
Yeah. And if there is, call my insurance company.
Exactly. So another great point to that is that there's renter's insurance, and it's actually
Right.
very inexpensive. So your tenants are ultimately going to be protected. So let's just say there was like a flood from a water heater, right? And it messes up, whatever piece of furniture they had sitting in the garage. Well, renter's insurance will cover something like that.
And you can require them to have renter's insurance, right?
Exactly. So it could be a requirement. So at the end of the day, all these things, I'm like, boom, there's an objection. We can overcome that objection. There's so many solutions. So I think in life, period, no matter what's going on, you have to have the mindset of there's always going to be a solution to any problem. There's always going to be a way around these things. And the reward is so much greater than not.
One of my favorite, and this is a good tip if you don't have this or not, but I got a home warranty with my first rental property, and I added my tenant to the policy as someone that could call and schedule
That's actually
it.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay,
It
so
cut out
another
all
great
the middleman
reason,
there.
Yeah, like don't call me.
Yeah, literally.
I don't
it
want
was,
to hear from you.
Hey, Matt, just want to let you know we got the garage door opener fixed and replaced. We called them. We submitted a ticket. They're sending you a bill for $75.
Right. No, that's amazing. That's amazing. So a lot of times, again, it's about having people in your corner that know what's going on so you can lean on them for mentorship, And another thing that I kind of want to touch on with this is, okay, well, there's two things. One, if you're renting, you're paying somebody else's mortgage.
Yep.
So now you're the guy that's paying down that guy's $240,000.
And you can't be mad at them because they invested. They took the risk.
Exactly. And then the other thing to that is, it might seem really scary. Like, how am I going to come up with a down payment, right? Where am I going to find $10,000, $20,000? Well, first of all, there's so many different programs going on right now that are amazing. But myself personally, I grew up with humble beginnings, and I moved in with my mom and my dad at 30 years old. And, not the cutest look.
Right.
But honestly, who cares? Like, I never regret that now because long and short, my father passed away. And I'm so grateful now that I got to spend that extra time with him. Yeah. Just such a blessing. So there's that. But furthermore, I didn't get my nails done. I didn't go shopping. I didn't go get new shoes, whatever it was. And I was like super ridiculous where I'd like go to my sister's house and take food out of the fridge and whatever. But if you really want something in life, you make it happen.
Sacrifice.
And so I sacrificed and I came up with every penny that I had to get that first $10,000. And surprisingly, it happened sooner than I ever imagined. And then afterwards, I was like, man, I didn't realize how much I was blowing money on silly things that I really didn't need, because you just kind of get into the cycle of that lifestyle. I think it's the way we all are, right? And, eventually over time, as I've, grown and things like that, I get to have a little bit more fun with money and not just investments.
But again, you appreciate it so much. It's such a different appreciation for the sacrifice that you made. I'll share with you mine. So in 2012, we got married in 2013. So unfortunately, that wedding expo probably wouldn't have got us. But we bought our first house in 2012. We used a USDA loan, so 0% down. Got the seller to cover the closing costs and got a check back for $1,000. You can still do that today. The last 2 years have been tough, but the last buyer we got under contract got all of his closing costs paid. So it's coming back. So that's exciting. But you can do like a USDA loan is essentially, it's similar to a VA loan with a little bit of mortgage insurance, which isn't bad. But it's income restricted and it's also location restricted. So it can't be in a major city. And you can go online and see those maps, or any one of your realtors can assist you with that. But essentially what we did, we bought our first house for $135,000. 4 years later, we sold it for $250,000. And even with the expenses we put in, I came up with about $15,000 to $17,000 a year we made in pure profit.
That's awesome.
You can't do that. Just sleep. Again, you're paying somebody else's mortgage, or you're making money in your sleep, like you just said. Now, where would I get $60,000 to buy a rental house? Own my own home for 4 years and pay a mortgage instead of rent?
Right.
Borrow it, leverage it from my house. Now I have a rental house. Rinse and repeat. It sounds simple. It actually isn't. It is simple. It's not that hard. Obviously, there's moving parts to it, and you have to get comfortable with it. But today's day and age with like YouTube and things like that, you can research, read books, get comfortable with it. See some success stories. There's plenty of maps. Don't buy any courses, then that's just ridiculous.
Right. But no, YouTube University is the way to go for sure.
Yeah, they're actually giving
Matt
us
Wheatley
certificates
University.
for that.
This podcast is really taking people there too. Don't discount us.
Yeah, and hey, I do want to touch on one other subject for sure, and that's the scary R word that everyone's throwing around lately, which is the recession word.
Dun dun dun.
I even heard they're trying to change the definition of a recession.
I mean, I don't even want to get into that story because I feel very passionately about all that.
Yeah. So essentially, a recession is 2 quarters of negative growth, right?
Yes.
That's what it's supposed to be. That's what we're looking at the second quarter now.
Yes, for all the time that, Webster's dictionary existed.
So essentially, it doesn't mean a complete collapse or catastrophe. What it means is we're correcting, we're adjusting. And if you think about it, the last 2 years have been just unsustainable craziness.
Right.
So my biggest takeaway or tip for anyone that's trying to protect their home, their family home, or their business from a recession is live like it's 2019. Go into 2019, look at what you're made in your, and this is mostly for salespeople, right? If you've got a steady job, it's a little different, but live like it's 2019. Don't count your 2020 and your 2021 taxes as your income forever. Because in our business, it exploded. Right.
I love that you said that. Even with Fidelity, we're a business. We have to be analyzing the market, what's going on, how many realtor clients are, bringing in contracts and whatnot. And so, again, we try to think ahead, right? Everything's always planning ahead as a business person. And essentially, that's what we did when we were thinking about the budget for next year. We didn't base it off of 2021 or 2022. We went ahead and decided we were going to base it off of 2018, 2019 exactly.
Yeah.
So, brilliant point.
Pretty much, I think the only people that are going to get in trouble with the next 18-ish months, and that's not to say it's going to be 18 months, but let's say 12 to 18 months. We're already in it about 3 or 4 months, right, with the adjustments. So let's say the next 2 years. If the last 2 years are crazy, this 2 years is going to correct. If you can say, if you bought a house, and we could have bought a house on the lake, right? So I'll use myself for an example. The house we live in, we paid $300,000 for. If we would have went out and bought a $900,000 house and tripled our expense because we tripled our income, that's when you're going to feel the pressure. And when you feel that pressure, then you're going to have to start doing things out of the ordinary in sales, which is then going to lead to stress, collapse, those kind of things. It's really going to become difficult for you. So I think most people call it living below your means, right? But your means changed a lot in the last couple of years. So just think back to 2018, 2019. If you still have a stable job and you're growing in your company, great. This isn't going to hurt you if you just live below your means, right? So just proceed with caution the next 12 to 18 months. Doesn't mean you can't move. A lot of people will benefit from it. Downsizing, cashing out in their equity. Probably the biggest misconception I have with people that are moving, let's say they bought a house for $250 and it's worth $500. And they can get $200,000 to $250,000 in equity out, and they can put $100,000 down on a new house, but their payment's higher. You just forget, even if your payment's $800 a month higher, you forget you have $150,000 in the bank.
Right.
That's
that
huge.
Emergency,
You can
break glass.
You potentially. I've done the math on scenarios a few times, but essentially, for most people, they can float themselves for anywhere between 3 to 6 years if they lost their job and had no income.
That's incredible.
That's way more peace of mind than my payments lower. So it's situational. And, yes, you want to keep a house so you have a 3% interest rate on. I get that. But don't tie it. 3% interest rate and a low payment, you can't float yourself for that long if you don't have a job. Right?
Correct.
So, and if you're scrambling, again, we get into that like mindset of pressure. Most families suffer the most when it's financial pressure. So if you can ease that and making a move to a new home and put a lot of money down, not pay mortgage insurance, like we said, there's some really good programs out there. If you pay $10,000 to $15,000 in seller credits, you can buy that rate down. You can do the 2-1 buy down. That was a good one. So there's a lot of different creative ways. And if you buy it down for 2 years and the interest rates dip, refinance, off you go. You're good to go.
Well, you said, basically, essentially, the beautiful word, which is leverage, right? Yeah. I was talking with an advanced investor the other day, and, I talked to him about what my plans are, what my goals are, things like that. And he goes, you're not leveraging your property properly. And when I thought about it, I was like, he's so right. Because the market grew so much over the course of the last few years, I do have money just sitting there, and the money can continue to sit there, and that's great. I have that in the bank. Essentially, not, physical
it's potential
cash flow.
money. Equity is potential money.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
but,
money if
however,
you use it.
Exactly. So I should consider pulling it out, because quite frankly, if I were to pull out money and go get another investment property, and just because I'm going to get an investment property doesn't mean I need to spend $600,000 on a property. It could be a $200,000 dollar single family home, $275,000 actually up in Ocala.
Yeah, there you go.
And again, be on your merry way, continue with your goals and everything. So again, just kind of rethinking things a little bit and opening up your mind. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, I have to work 3 times as hard, which I'm still happy to do. But, it's a slower way of getting to an end goal when really I can utilize my resources in addition to, I can take both paths. Why choose one, right?
It is absolutely. Leverage was key in the prehistoric days, right? Like they learned how to move things easier, and that's all it is. You're moving things around and making it easier. The tax code is there for a reason. And you touched on probably the most important thing about this whole conversation is, what is your goal? Where do you want to get to? Everything's easy if you work it back from that.
It's so smart.
Yeah.
So many people, I want to do this, or I want to sell 1 million homes, or I want to do this. Yeah. What is your why?
Yeah.
And are we breaking that down? Smart goals.
Yeah. And they're all, and your personal goal can't be wrong unless it's dictated by somebody else or an outside influence of like, well, why do you want to sell that many homes? Oh, well, because I want to be like this person or that. But why do you want to be like this person? You're not that person.
Right. I'm going on a vacation this week. I'm really excited about, right? And I knew that I was kind of out of shape, and I knew we were going on a boat.
Okay.
So then I was like, I hadn't worked out in a while and all this. And so immediately I was like, all right, I got 60 days. So from now until 60 days from now, what do I got to do? Well, I'm trying to exit money out of this conversation.
I'm glad you didn't start that now.
Right?
It doesn't work that way.
I know. You need a little bit more time. But I'm backing into my plan, right? So I knew I wanted to hit X amount of number of pounds or whatever by the time I got to the boat. So then boom, that equates, 2 pounds per week over the course of the last 8 weeks to be able to achieve that goal. Well, how do I get those 2 pounds? Well, now I know I have to go to the gym 4 days a week, for the next 8 weeks. And I also know that I have to eat X amount of calories per day leading up to. So now I'm not just saying.
If you get to the end and it's not there, just chop off a toe.
Exactly. That's
that works too.
Wear a black full one-piece swimsuit, right? No,
I always make jokes with that because it's fitness.
Instagram filters.
Fitness is such a cool, it's such a cool industry to be in now. Of course, it has its dark sides and its bad sides and its toxicity to it, like everything else. But if one thing that I learned through my fitness journey was, I hate myself. That's why I want to go work out. When you turn that around and you fully get the fitness industry, you do it to feel better. You do it to.
I'm so happy right now, and I'm almost obnoxiously energetic.
Yeah.
And I don't have an addiction to coffee like I did.
There you go.
I had an addiction to coffee to the point where it was giving me migraines, and I was always exhausted, and I'm and I had a little thyroid issue that was messing with me. And now it's I'm not doing coffee, and I just feel so great.
Don't even get me into the mental aspect of it too.
Oh my gosh.
The mental side
is joy.
I see so many people that go on fitness journeys, and it's usually it usually starts with hurt and pain and suffering.
Right.
And then usually that pain and suffering turns into the toxic side of working out and feeling bad if you miss the gym. But then the people that make it through get into a cycle of this is my lifestyle. I want to go. I don't feel bad if I miss it. Yeah, I don't feel bad if I miss it. I feel bad that I didn't get that time that I enjoy. Not that I'm not trying to punish myself. I'm trying to reward myself.
Exactly.
On the other side, but fitness teaches you a lot as far as consistency. There are no shortcuts. I mean, there are, but they're terrible for you. Don't do them.
Right.
The people that take those paths usually end up in. Again, shortcuts are always shortcuts. Never take them. But if you can stay consistent at that, and you're a business owner, and you can carve that time out, it teaches you time blocking. It teaches you consistency. It shows you results over time. I mean, there's so many good things that come out of that. The stereotypes for the gym, I don't like too much because it gets a bad reputation for, people can look at you, you're in great shape, and they're like, oh, that person's just a meathead or whatever it is.
Right,
you know what I mean? Or their genetics are just good. And the more I've learned about that, because I've gone from the strength side to more the mental side now, the last few years, the mental side of that is so crazy because you can break that down and understand. At first, it used to upset me that people would be that would judge. And then I got more into the aspect of, well, the only reason those things are coming out of those people's mouths, they're making excuses for themselves, not for you. And that was pretty powerful for me to see that, because it's easy for me to say, I can't look like you because your genetics are better than mine.
Well, Deepak Chopra is pretty amazing to listen to. And the other day I was just sharing that ultimately, you know, what other people say and think of you is none of your business.
Yeah.
And the reality is that I've created a bubble for myself now where I do not get upset about anything. I do not allow stress to affect me like it once did. It's just not worth it.
It's not.
It's just not, because whatever, again, it is, it's going on, you're going to find a solution. Funny enough, on Friday, I got stuck on a boat in the middle of Fort Lauderdale because, you know, you can get like the whatever, like the levels or whatever went down and stuff. And it was like less than a foot. And all of a sudden I'm on the sandbar, you know, and I'm with some friends, and my friends are like stressing out. They're like, the boat's going to tip over and da-da-da-da. I'm like, have a drink, relax. You know, stressing about this is not going to do anything for anyone. So meanwhile, please turn up the music, sir. And I'm going to dance for the next hour as we wait for the sea tow versus sitting here and being all panicked, because literally it does nothing for us.
It doesn't. I mean, we were fine. We were fine. You have the choice. Like, if you'd have not known that, but you just wanted to hang out for another 30 minutes to get towed in, you'd have had a good time, right?
Right.
So it's cool to me to start to realize where all these triggers are. Catch yourself in the trigger, ask yourself why, and then try to make the most of it, try to make the best of it. You honestly, one of the big ones for me, you can't function like if you're an athlete. A lot of people say if you're in business, you should treat yourself like an athlete. And I love that, because you have to perform at the top level, right?
Right.
How can you perform at the top level if you're in fight or flight or stress or panic, any of that stuff? You can't. You can't think of any of the education or training. Just imagine being frozen, right? Like just earlier, you put me on the spot and I froze. I was like, what is that one? You can't think. So you have to turn it off.
-4 real quick.
Yeah, right? So you can't think about those things that you've trained for that you know. Like, I know that quote. Right. So it takes you a second, and I don't know if you can rewind and look at this, but it took me a second, and my thought process was, okay, unlock it. Stop going to fight or flight. You know this. Okay, found it.
Yeah.
And the quicker you can do that, it's cool how neurons work in your brain, because whatever triggers you or gets you upset or angry or mad, the first time it's hard. You have to really dig into it, ask the why, and then you create this new pathway. And then what do you do when you create a new pathway? You've always keep going down this one. You've got to go, oh, no, down this one. Oh, no, down this one. And all of a sudden, you just go down that one.
Well, you know, you can literally restructure your mind. So the human brain is set up to always be in fear, essentially, for survival, right? That's like the base root of it. That's why everyone's always kind of like nervous or
feel
considering,
threatened.
Right? But the reality is, if you wake up every single day, well, this is something that I picked up too, and I say, what's going to be great about today? And I train my mind, what's going to be great about today? And then at the end of the day before bed, what was great about today? And I say that, and it builds your mind in a positive mindset, and you kind of start to get away from, you know, that nervousness or whatever, because
and it really
focus on the positive and the beauty.
Your life is your perspective. It's how you see it. I can't say that any louder. Like, life is how you see it. So if you the Simon Sinek's and them, that they'll teach you, like pilots and skiers, they don't focus on the obstacle, because if you just see obstacles, you'll always see obstacles. Right. So pilots know not to focus on obstacles. They focus on their flight path. Skiers know, don't focus on the tree. Focus on the path.
That's a great
focus
point.
on the path. Focus on the path. And if you keep saying that, they'll just focus on the path. They don't even see the trees anymore. It's just gone. So for them, those are great things. And I think I'm now going into that stage myself in the mental training that I'm doing, if you want to call it that, of being able to absorb and process both. Because you go through that stage of like wanting everything to be positive, and it can't be, right? Like, it just
life happens.
You can't have positive without negative. That's the way life works. Everything has its equal balance, and you want to remain neutral, but you can never truly achieve neutrality at all until you die. We talked about that with Maurice on the podcast. It's like even the molecules in this water are moving at all times. You can't be neutral until you're done. So you never want to be fully neutral, but you always want to strive for it, as far as you don't want to be too far off the path. And one of the doctors that I follow, he had a big one for me on that. And he said, the further you are away from reality, positive or negative, the more you will suffer. That was a big one for me, because if you want it to be this way and it's this way, that's a big gap.
That makes huge sense.
Right? Like
Right.
it's so cool. So what I'm trying to do now is more like process, not ignore, because your body will crave positivity if you want positivity all the time, which is fine. I'd rather you want positivity than negativity. But then when you do get the negativity, that mountaintop from positivity to negativity is a big drop.
Well, I think that a lot of people are raised in an environment, and then they have certain expectations of how
Yeah.
they think that their life is going to be. And I
Yes.
think a lot of the reason why people get upset or unhappy in life is because the plan didn't go accordingly.
Their
And-
plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then you're like, let go and let God, or
Yep.
whatever it is that you
Yep.
believe
Let it flow.
in.
Yep.
You know,
A
but
lot of
it's-
them are the
it speaks
same
to that.
with religion, with Buddhism. Were you talking about Deepak earlier? They're all the same when it comes to letting life flow and letting it happen to you,
And pivot.
and then reacting to it. Like what's the one thing you can control in life? Your reaction to whatever happens.
Right.
That's it. You can't control what happens. One of the big things that I also, it was a big one for me, is control, where that comes from, right? So control comes from a fear of losing something, or not being able to have it, or not being able to attain it. So fear, if you have someone trying to control you, it's not always the case, but fear is based from control. So if someone's trying to control you, or anything like that, it's a lot of it is fear of loss of love.
So it's funny, I had that same problem, and I used to be a leader and a manager of many people, a team of 16 plus construction workers, things like that, you know. So dealing with the different personality types and whatnot, and I was fearful at times that if I wasn't involved in every little thing, that something was going to fail. And oddly enough, I'm literally riding in an Uber, and it turned out my Uber driver was so cute. This older gentleman, and he used to be a former CEO, and now he was retired. He was kind of lonely and wanted to connect with people, so he was driving Uber.
Oh, that's goals right there.
Oh
That's
my
really
gosh,
cool.
I loved him
Yeah.
so much, and I'm getting to talking to him, and we're just making conversation, and I was kind of sharing with him about what was going on in my life with work. And he goes, you know, Gizelle, and it's always stuck with me, you know, Gizelle, what I learned was I don't get problems, I give them. And I loved that saying, and it clicked for me. And from that point, I really pushed delegation.
Yeah.
And I understood that I'm actually not allowing other people to flourish and grow and evolve into people that they're, you know, supposed to be. And therefore, I wasn't being a good leader because I'm taking away from them the
Yeah.
opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
You know, and so I kind of, you know, checked in. I just checked in.
Yeah. No, that's
you know,
awesome.
you let it go, and then you check in and you see how it's going, and then you know, allow for the opportunities for the mentorship.
It's really cool. I mean, I think everyone probably that listens or watches this can go back to something and someone that had a big influence in their life that changed the way they think about
Mine was
something.
an Uber driver.
Yeah, there you go. Mine was my my boss at the auto mechanic store.
Yeah.
He basically forced me to come inside and be in front of people, and here we are. We're in front of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's cool. Then we go into the power of reflection, right? Like reflection is really powerful because you can go into the state of gratitude. And if you've watched anything that I say, the attitude of gratitude is probably one of the most powerful things you can work on for yourself.
Yeah.
No matter where you are. I mean,
You got to stay humble.
The big one that I reference for that, the meme, or there's some videos about it, is the guy that walks to work admires the guy that has a bike to go to work. The guy that's on the bike looks at the guy in the car. The guy in the car
Right.
looks at the guy in the Mercedes. The guy in the Mercedes looks at the guy with the jet. And the guy with the jet looks at the guy that has bigger, you know, high rises that doesn't have to have a jet, whatever it is. But there's always something to be grateful for. And that is probably one of the most powerful things, because once you get up to those ranks where you have the jet and you don't have that attitude of gratitude, you just become an asshole.
Right.
To be honest.
Being honest and
Yeah.
keeping it real, and nobody wants to deal with that. And not only that, like people, if let's just say you were a sales position and you got super caught up in yourself, well, guess what? The whole reason why you were successful to begin with, which was probably that you were approachable, you were hungry at the beginning, you were humble about things, you were willing
Worked
to put
hard.
in the extra work. Now all of a sudden you think you're too cool, and people are unattracted to that, and therefore your business will slow in other ways. To kind of circle back to the beginning of this, you complimented me and you said, you made it about the team and blah, 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 as much as the leader. And I think that's kind of funny because it speaks to you that you would notice that, because I feel like you're the kind of person, and I didn't plan that per se, that's just how I roll. But I think that it makes sense, that it's so great that you're the kind of person that essentially would want more so somebody to pay attention to your team than yourself.
Yeah.
So that speaks volumes to you and your character.
Well, and
you're
thank
living,
you for that.
you're practicing what you preach, right?
Yeah, thank you for that. And one of the things again, reflection, when Brandon came to me at first, it was like 4.5 years ago now. It was, okay, maybe this will take some off my plate. I can teach my friend how to do what I do. He can make some money doing it. And it was overwhelming to teach someone the first time how your organized brain chaos works to manage all this stuff.
Like, I know my mess. You don't know my mess.
Yeah. So it was a little bit overwhelming. I was like, you know what? I'm investing in this. And I was like, well, why am I investing in this? Again, we're asking questions, right? Always ask questions. And it came down to, well, what is my goal with real estate? It started out with, it's better than working a 9 to 5, and I can have some freedom and spend some time.
I gave up my 9 to 5 so I could work 24/7.
Yeah, exactly. But really the goal ended up being, okay, people are naturally attracted to what I'm doing. If I want more people to see what I'm doing, I have a limit as a human of how much I can do. So it came down to, I want to make sure that if we're going to grow this thing, that they're going to learn and do the things that make us different. So that's why I do care for them all the same and put them on the same playing field as myself, because if I had the other attitude, it would just be about me.
Right.
And it just wouldn't work. And again, like you said, the business would suffer because everything would change. And it's nice to see everyone here really take that on and run with it and kind of cheer each other on, because I cheer them on. And like they say, you got to lead by example. If it's not authentic, they can smell it too. So you can try. But
am I allowed to give this away, because is it more like a private thing? But when you guys do your team meetings and you guys give each other your mail.
Shh, no, I'm just kidding.
No, not allowed.
No, you're good. I'm just joking.
Share about that, because I think that was so cool when I saw that, and I loved that.
Well, I can't take credit for it. That was definitely Kate.
Humble again.
Yeah. I can't take credit for it. I mean, and it's tough. So, I do believe in, male and female genetics are different. Males are taught to kind of suppress their emotions a little bit more. Not always, but that's kind of the pattern you see, right, in the previous generations. So I tend to break out of that a little bit. So when I saw that, I was like, yeah, let's do it. And it is cool. It's hard conversations and emotions. I'm a big fan of the Ted Lasso show. Shout out to Jason Sudeikis. I really hope he watches this.
I'm gonna DM him the episode.
But you see in those episodes, the big one for me was episode 9, season 1, where Rebecca's forced into a corner and she can't escape having to apologize to him, and it takes a nasty, overwhelming piece of emotion where she feels like she's broken and she has nothing to lose. This person owns an entire soccer team. It takes her to feel broken with nothing to lose to finally apologize. And what you see on the other side of that is when you finally do that scary thing and you step out into your uncomfortability zone, you might be surprised on how people receive that.
Yeah.
It's a big one, because that changes the course of the entire next season. Obviously, it was scripted, but it changes everything from now this problem is gone, this relationship's gotten stronger. And that's the big thing when you step into the vulnerability zone of getting hurt, right? You can stay in a bubble forever if you want to. We learned this from coronavirus. You can stay home forever, but you're not going to make any friends, relationships. Your life feels pointless. You're depressed. You overeat, unhealthy. I mean, there's such a big mental and physical game that goes on there. So with that being said, a lot of times if you watch someone that steps out into the vulnerability zone and they mess up, my first reaction is, wow, I wish I had the courage to do that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the person that does it thinks everyone's laughing at me.
Right.
So I try to make sure I see that as in, because I have a hard time with public speaking. Like I work myself up about it. I've never been good at it inside to myself.
Never heard you're supposed to imagine everyone in their
Right.
underwear.
Yeah. However, it's always been like a perceived fear of mine. Not that I'm not bad at it, but I do get tongue twisted sometimes. I've got accent issues and language barriers and stuff.
Well,
so sometimes it comes across wrong.
You know, like social media, for example, I hear all the time, I partner with realtor clients and mortgage clients, and they're afraid to go on social media. They're like, oh, the way that I look or the way that I speak. And the funny thing is, like, when was, the last time you ever went on social media and started picking on people or analyzing them or thinking that they didn't look attractive or this or this
and
or that?
If they did,
nobody does.
Is that your client? No.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to work with that person anyways.
Yeah.
And so, quite frankly, get out of your head and just do it. Just
the big thing to me is, and again, I went through it all myself, so if this is you, I totally get it. I don't like the way I look, don't like the way I sound. Guess what? That's how you look, and that's how you sound.
So get over it.
I mean, it
love yourself.
It's true, because that's how everybody sees you anyway. You just don't see it all the time. You see through your eyes. Everybody else sees you. So whether you don't like your figure, whatever it is, you've got a pimple, I don't care. It's there. People will see it.
And people don't even care. And maybe it's going to make you a little bit more authentic and relatable.
Yes.
If you're not perfect. Because, earlier you said
perfect
something,
pisses people
judgments.
off. Yeah.
There are judgments if you're
Yeah.
a little too perfect sometimes, right?
Yeah.
People are like, that guy's an asshole.
Well, like I said, you go to the gym, the most fit person there, the first thing you think of is, what are they taking? Or they don't do anything else but this, or they don't have a job, or their genetics are amazing, or their spouse is a plastic surgeon, or whatever it is, right? It's always those, your brain goes straight to the negative.
Right.
Whereas it could just be that person hustles.
Right. Mad respect.
Right. So, I mean, it is cool to kind of dive into the mental side of this business, because there's so much ego. Yeah. I mean, we just went to that the awards gala, and
I was so inappropriate. I was like, I was robbed. But really, I know like the proper answer. And the reality is too, everybody there does work hard.
They do. Yeah.
And that's the bottom line for that. And everybody is deserving of everything, that was offered that night and whatnot. And so jokingly or whatever, I mess around. But the reality is too, like if you were to get too caught up in
that's the thing thinking, so that was my main point about the gala is it's almost like a way to present yourself in whatever light you think, and that's my biggest takeaway is, okay, if that person would have asked why they're wearing that, they would have probably chose something different. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, do you understand the perception that you're giving of yourself? Because most people don't. The truth is, you're so caught up into, I'm supposed to look like this because this person that I idolize looks like this.
Right.
Or this person, and honestly, the people that show up in like a t-shirt, I have respect for because they don't care.
It's like, who are you? At
the
end of the day, it really goes back to
is that roots. Who you are? Because I don't think so.
Who
you know
are
what I mean?
you? Yeah. What are you passionate about? Be yourself always, and authenticity is always key in everything.
Yeah, and there's so much like in rooms like that. There's a lot of ego that can take over. There's a lot of judgment that can take over. So those people, and they are the best of the best. Those people are supposed to be the ones that are training themselves to dial that back. Right. To do the work to bring that back. And I actually start to see those, because I used to see it as a negative, like I don't want to be around it because I don't want to be affected by it. But now I see it as a chance to grow, to learn, to say, okay, this is my chance. It's almost like training, right? Like if you don't get triggered ever, you're never going to do any work. Again, You're back to the bubble. So I can go out there and you can be triggered and you can say, okay, why did that make me upset? Or why did that make me upset? And then now you can start saying, okay, well, this is a me problem because it made me upset. You know what I mean?
Right. And then also, now there's
it's little
diversity.
Silly things.
And now there's diversity, right? Because now you're you and you're in a room full of maybe some other people that you feel like maybe all, have a certain mindset or whatever that might be. And now you can maybe open up some perspective to the way that you see things.
I love that. And I love the way that you can have a positive influence on other people. Like if you see the judgment come out, you can shut it down. You know what I mean? Like all those little ways to make a positive difference. Like we went back to the Uber driver that made a positive difference in your life, that changed the course. You never know when you're doing that.
Well, I have like a funny little story about this actually, because, I started in the business and I, was putting myself out there, hitting it kind of heavy on social media or whatnot. And I did end up hearing, right, social media star. And I did end up hearing around the way when I wasn't in a room that there was another person from another company that's a direct competitor that was making fun of me for the way that I spoke. So funny enough, that was the one person that, is judging people on social media.
Where did that judgment come from?
Well, what's interesting is that she ultimately most likely had her own insecurities, right? But, going back to our point a minute ago was that I had a realtor client of mine that stood up for me when I wasn't there. That's awesome. And I heard about it from somebody else around the way there. So not even the person told me, but she stood up and she told that person that they were only making themselves look bad by taking that stance and talking ill of others around them. And so there's opportunities in life where you could do good deeds and be a great person, and not even because you're trying to do it because you're whatever for clout or whatever it might be, just for yourself to be a good human on this planet at the end of the day and put positivity in the world and remind people, instead of just sitting around and giggling, laughing because you think that's what everybody's into for the moment, you be the one to stand up and do what's right. Yeah,
I mean, it's like I said, I think everyone in some form or fashion has been caught up with that. It starts in elementary school, bullying, right?
I used to have rocks thrown at me, fun fact, when I was a kid growing up, and people were like, oh, Gizelle, you're like this or you're that or whatever. I'm like, y'all have no idea. I got made fun of hard.
Well, stop telling them sticks and stones and they all start throwing stones at you.
I'm actually grateful now because I grew up poor. My dad used to take me to school in this messed up car. And it was funny because I'd get in the chair real quick, like when I get in the passenger side, and I put the chair back. And I'd have him pick me up at the top of the hill because I don't want to get laughed at. And I had a friend actually that used to see me and they're like, oh, I thought your chair was broken because I always get in the car and and I remember my dad always being like,
now I know why you're so tall. You stretched out every morning before school.
It was like stories like that, or like my dad had a work van and I had friends who were going to the movie theater and there was 50-pound bags of sugar in the back of the van. Van had a bullet hole in the windshield and all this. And literally, like, I took my friends to sit on bags of 50-pound, sugar cane in the back to go to the theater, and and we'd make a turn and everyone like fall over. There's no seatbelts. But I am so thankful that I had these moments and experiences, because do you think I'm ever gonna laugh at somebody that's had some sort of a setback in their life?
You have to have that relatable experience. You do.
No, and I love it. I'm grateful, and again, that always continues to help burn that fire.
So I can give you.
Don't forget. Tell me yours.
I can give you an add-on to that. So my dad had 2 work vans like that. And I started walking to school because half the time it wouldn't start and I'd have to push it from the school. He would bump start it with the door open and I'd run and jump inside. So
that's awesome.
That was even worse. But again, help build the frame to start working out on, I guess. I don't know. There's always something to be grateful for.
And you learn and you grow and you become a stronger, better person from them. And you always got to hold on to those kinds of things and then remember how it must have felt for other people.
My biggest takeaway from the Maurice podcast was one of his lines was, the hardest thing that happens to you in life usually turns out to be the best thing that happens to you in life.
Oh, I love that.
That's it. It was a good one. I mean, he had a lot of good ones in his.
It's about testing yourself, right? You become a stronger person.
He actually opened up my mind too to see the negative, which sounds terrible, but he's like, you're a delusional optimist sometimes. Like, you always see the good, you don't see the bad. And it helped me understand that you don't have to drown out negativity. You can focus on positivity and accept negativity.
I'm learning from you today because I've been on this kick about everything's positive. Don't get in my way.
And here's the thing
is, okay, but I also am hearing what you're saying, right?
Because it gets to a point where it can be toxic to just live in that and ignore negativity. Because when negative things will happen, positive things will happen, and negative things will happen. Your perception of them can change it a little bit, but you need to be able to understand and process. Like if a loved one dies, and you're just like, it's not positive, I'm not going to acknowledge it, that's going to really eat away at you. And you're not going to know about it for a little while, and it can cause all kinds of issues. And here's the thing is, we're always learning. One of my favorites from recently was, it's all going to be okay, because in the end, I think it said, like, in the end, it's not the end until it's not all okay. So if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that's awesome, because everyone goes through struggles, different stages in life. Like right now, we have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. It's tough.
Right.
It's tough.
Lots of energy all day.
It was tough when they were infants. And we're like, we just want them to get to this age so we can go on vacations and watch them smile. And now they're yelling if they don't have the right apple juice, So it's just different. And I'm sure
and
the next
to realize like every little thing that you do, they're watching.
Yeah, the next phase will be a different challenge, and the next phase will be a different challenge. And one thing I will say is, they do say it doesn't get easier.
Right.
And so you just have to get better. You have to get stronger, and that's why as you grow, you learn and you go through all these adaptive changes, and you got to just do the work.
Absolutely.
You ready for happy hour?
Let's do this.
The viewers are like, where's happy hour? I don't know.
We're all going to the Roasted Spirit. We'll see you there.
The shout out to Frankie. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Gizelle, for coming on. I appreciate you.
No,
Let's go support local.
Absolutely. So important.
Bye, guys.
Bye.